Hello, folks, and welcome to another one of our free Friday community classes. This week is an example of one of those you asked for it kinds of classes. Not too long ago, I did a class on cleansing and clearing spaces, and sort of as a little nod inside of that class, we talked about the practice of strewing herbs. And I got a lot of feedback about it. People were really interested. I did a couple of posts on Instagram. So we're going to dedicate a whole class today just on this practice. Now, strewing, that word implies kind of throwing things around. If you think about the American style, the common American style of a wedding where there's, a flower girl or flower person that goes in front of the couple and they kind of throw rose petals all over the floor, right? That's an example of strewing. And so this practice, a big part of British English folk plant practice is basically that. It's the idea of throwing or sprinkling or strewing dry or fresh plant material around a space with intention, with petition to the plant spirits, asking that they soak up any ill, any disharmony, any toxicity in a space. Or maybe your approach might be that they transform that energy, that the plants kind of move the energy through their physical form and turn it into something more harmonious, something more healthy, something more positive. So however you look at it, strewing herbs is a lot of fun, and it is essentially throwing plant material all over a space. I'm going to show you how it goes here in a second. Now, the way I like to do this is to do a blend of herbs. We'll talk about which plants to work with here in a second. To do a blend of herbs, to connect with those plants and ask the spirit of those plants for what for assistance in what I'm doing, which is cleansing, clearing, and blessing a space. And then to sort of ceremoniously walk around the space, usually from the front door, clockwise, kind of being intentional about how I move. Or if there's a basement, maybe you move from the basement to the top floor, or the back of the space to the front of the space, whatever feels appropriate for you. And I sprinkle all those herbs around, and I stay in my meditative space. I have a sacred fire lit in the form of a candle, and I try to use my own creative visualization, my own inner vision, to experience or explore the magic of those plants, kind of soaking up any illness, any disharmony, any blockage from the space. And I try to be present with that process for 5 or 10 minutes. Then sweep it all out. So I like to sweep all of it from the back of the room to the front, out the front door, just get rid of it. You might sweep it into a pile, collect it, and go burn it outside. You might sweep it out the back door. There are many iterations of how this can be done as you read different parts of English folklore. So I think that there's room for you to do what feels right in your space, or how you're inspired by the spirits of place or by the plants that you work with, right? That's really it. You don't necessarily need to overthink it too much. If it feels good, these rituals are generally good, right? If it feels like a shift happened, and that's what we're going for. So, strewing herbs, very powerful, very simple. Now, which herbs to work with? When in doubt, evergreens. Evergreens are always a fantastic choice for purifying, cleansing a space, and for subsequently blessing and bringing that nice evergreen, bright longevity energy into a space. We will be talking about that as well here in just a minute. So evergreens are always a good idea. Flowers, especially, beautiful, fragrant flowers, again, whether fresh or dry. I almost always work with dry flowers, dry plant material in general for this, because it's easier to clean up. When the plant material is fresh, sometimes it can kind of muck up under the broom, and it gets a little bit difficult to work with. So I will almost always work with dry plant material, but you can do whatever you like. And of course, any plants that you're close to that have taught you that their energy is about cleansing and clearing and purifying. For me, there's always some juniper berries, juniper needles in my strewing blends, always some evergreen, always some flowers, always some aromatic herbs, sometimes a few drops of essential oil. Yeah, so, there again is no right, best practice as far as which plants you should choose. You should choose the plants that make sense for the job at hand, especially ones that you are already in relationship. Now, when we cleanse a space, this is a very important practice in traditions of wort cunning, in traditions of working plant magic, the way that I practice it, that when you cleanse a space, the space is cleansed, but the space is hungry, okay? So think about it this way. When you clear off a chalkboard, right? Let's say there's a bunch of notes and squiggles and doodles, and it's kind of gotten messy, and you're like, okay, we got to wipe the slate clean, quite literally. So you clean the chalkboard. It's nice and clean and black, no smudges. Maybe you even clean the eraser. You're kind of back to square one, back to clean slate space. Now, because of the nature of chalkboard, there is a hunger in the chalkboard to be written on, right? Now you have this blank canvas and it's kind of just begging you, egging you on even to put something there. And similarly, spaces crave pattern, right? So when we do cleansing work, you're kind of creating a blank space, an empty canvas, an empty vessel that wants to be filled with something. And if the pattern that you have just swept out the door has been there for a while, or is particularly strong, or is one that maybe you are involved in one way or another, guess what the path of least resistance to refilling that space is going to be? It's going to be having all that same old energy come right back in. Okay, so if you're doing a strewing ritual to cleanse a space after a sickness or someone passing or a fight or as part of spring cleaning or just because the space has started to feel uninspired and stagnant, be aware there's already a relationship between that energy you don't like and the space. They're already in connection because they're in connection now. So when you purify that space, there's effortlessness in that connection happening again, like reestablishing itself, right? So it's very important that we follow up a strewing ritual with a blessing ritual. You should fill the space with something intentional. You should choose now what gets drawn on that chalkboard. You should choose what gets poured into that empty vessel. If you don't, it's a crapshoot, okay? So some ideas. Do a secondary herbal working after the strewing is complete to bless the space. For me, I make a strong herbal tea with plants that I am in relationship with that represent peace, healing, abundance, happiness, joy, protection, all the good squishy stuff we love. And I walk around the space with my bare hands or with a sprig of juniper, and I sprinkle or asperge the space with that tea, blessing the space, choosing what to fill the space with. And it's not just a mindless walking around throwing tea all over the walls, okay? You have to be present with it. You have to be maybe saying words or affirmations or visualizing the space getting saturated in a new buzz of energy, right? Be present with it. It's a ritual. It's not a done for you, all problems solved silver bullet. When people approach this work that way, it doesn't work and it doesn't feel good. And that's why 90% of people doing plant-based ritual, plant-based magic aren't getting out of it what's possible, is because they're expecting the plants to do all the work and the plants already do so much of the work. So here's an opportunity, an invitation for you to initiate yourself into the deep ways of plant magic and show up and be there for the party, right? Be there for the magic and learn how it goes, learn how it feels. So another thing you could do is a botanical incense. This is something I really love. Again, doing your strewing ritual first, cleansing and clearing, maybe doing a little divination to feel out the space, get into communication with the spirits of place. How are we? We good? Everything good? Did I miss anything? All right, we're in a blank slate space now. So now I'm going to fire up my incense herb, get a charcoal going, choose some herbs that represent the blessings that I want in the space, spend a moment with those herbs in my hands. I'll show you when I do the demo, asking those plants to bless the space with what we're asking for, and then sprinkling them on the coal, or if you're using a pre-rolled incense, that's fine too. Walk around the space and fill the space up literally with the blessings of those plants. Fill it up with the smoke, right? This is old practice. We see this every culture with plant magic that I've ever been able to study. They have some iteration of this. In fact, when you look into the Scottish rites of sainting with smoke, where generally juniper is burnt in a cast iron pot or something and carried around the house, they're smoking it to the point where people have to leave the house because the smoke is too thick. You're starting to cough and your eyes are watering, and then you kind of throw open all the doors and windows and let that out, right? So that's a simultaneous purification and a blessing. The strewing and the sainting, they go together. So doing a wash, doing a sprinkling or an asperging, doing a botanical incense, maybe even bringing in fresh greens from outside to bless a space, or doing some other kind of ritual, a candle lighting, or making offerings to your patron deities or your ancestors, a really beautiful way to bring in blessings with the space. So that's all you need to know. It's very, very simple. Now we're going to move on to, I'm going to show you a demo of how I strew and sain the space. We're going to be here in my herb shop. So you're going to see what it looks like in a more commercial situation, but you can apply this at home. When I do this at home, we have some area rugs in our house. You can roll those up. That's fine. But I strew my herbs right on over the carpet too. Use a vacuum, use a broom, right? Get creative, get all the spaces, get all the nooks and crannies and make it happen. And with that, we're gonna move on now and we're gonna get this space nice and clean and nice and blessed. Okay, so we have a little bit of an awkward angle here because I want you to be able to see the floor, which we are going to do first the energetic cleansing on, and then space blessings. So I have here my herbs that I'm going to be working with, and I always carry around light with me, a fire to symbolize brightness and light, and as an offering and honoring to the spirits of place. And before I start having fun and throwing herbs everywhere, I'm going to spend some time really connecting to each of these herbs and asking the spirit of each of these herbs to show up in this work for us the way that we're asking, and to acknowledge why I've chosen each of these herbs and what I'm hoping that they will bring to the space. And from there, we can start the strewing practice. So now I'm going to move around the space with my burning incense and bless the space, again being very active in how this process happens and what I'm asking for, paying special attention to doors and windows. And there you have it, the process of strewing and seining the space.